There's an old subway line in the heart of the city that most people avoid. It's been around since the early 1900s, and while most of the trains still run on time, there are rumors about what happens in the tunnels. They say if you catch the last train on a rainy night, you might experience something unnatural. I didn't believe the stories at first. I'd been riding the subway for years and nothing ever seemed off. But that changed one night, a few weeks ago. I had been working late at the office. The city was empty, the streets slick with rain, and the trains were running on a reduced schedule. I caught the last train, just like any other night, and settled into an empty seat. I had the car to myself for most of the ride, save for a few commuters who got off at the earlier stops. It wasn't until the train reached the last station before things started to get strange. The lights flickered for a split second, and then the car went pitch black. No sound, no movement. I tried not to panic. I'd heard of power outages on this line before, but something felt off. I fumbled for my phone to use the flashlight, but the screen wouldn't turn on. I thought maybe the battery had died, but I remembered that it had been fully charged when I boarded. Then I heard it, a voice. It was soft at first, barely audible, but it was there, a whisper. Help me. I froze. The train was empty, except for me, and yet I heard the voice again. This time louder. Help me, please. I looked around the dark train car, feeling a chill creep down my spine. The voice was coming from behind me. I turned quickly, but no one was there. For a moment, I thought it was a prank, maybe a late-night passenger playing a trick on me. But when the train started to move again, the voice didn't stop. It kept whispering, but now it was saying something different. Why did you leave me? Why did you leave me down here? Panic set in. I stood up, looking around wildly, but the car remained empty. My heart was racing as I felt an unnatural cold seep into the air. The voice had changed. It sounded almost desperate, and it was coming closer. That's when I realized something. I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. There, standing at the far end of the car, was a figure, just barely visible in the dim light. It was a woman, hunched over, her face hidden beneath a wet, tangled mess of hair. She was covered in dirt, and her clothes were torn, like she had been living in the tunnels for years. She slowly began to move toward me, her head tilting at an unnatural angle. The whispering grew louder, more frantic, until it sounded like she was right next to my ear. Why did you leave me? Before I could react, the lights flickered again, brighter this time, and the train screeched to a sudden halt. I didn't think. I bolted for the door, but it didn't open. The train had stopped, but we were still in the tunnel, in the dark. Then the voice was gone. The woman was gone. Everything was silent. In a panic, I pulled the emergency handle, forcing the door open. I stepped onto the tracks, my heart pounding. The train was eerily still behind me. There was no sign of the woman, no sign of anyone. I ran until I found the next station, and when I made it to the platform, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. When I finally checked my phone, it was working again, but I couldn't find any record of the incident. No delay, no power outage, just an ordinary ride on an ordinary train. The next day, I told a friend about it. He'd lived in the city for years, so I figured he'd know something. He just stared at me for a long time before speaking. You saw her, didn't you? He asked quietly. I nodded. She's one of the lost souls of the subway. They say she was a woman who got trapped down there decades ago during a power failure. She died somewhere in the tunnels. The thing is, there's no record of her. No body, no missing person report. No one knows her name, but she haunts the subway now. And if you're unlucky enough to be on the last train, sometimes she'll find you. I haven't ridden that subway line since, but every now and then, I hear the whisper again. A soft voice in the dark. Why did you leave me? And I can't help but wonder, who will she find next?